It all gets started a week from tomorrow. Breeders' Cup 29 from Santa Anita Park. Pre-entries are in. Royal Delta cross-entered. Which classic will she run in? First preference would indicate a ladies' classic title defense. Plus, in lingerie, she has options. Ladies' classic or filly mare turf. Which direction is Todd Pletcher leaning? And multiple Grade 1 winner Dullahan. Decision time, Dale Romans. Turf or classic? And polytrack is not an option. Pursuit of the Cup starts right now.
Skywalker is still there, carrying a huge upset looming here, and they're coming down to the finish, and it is pleasantly perfect.
Raven Pass and Frankie Dettori have won the classic. Yata, what a performance, one we'll never
forget. Brought to you by Tipton, home of North America's first thoroughbred auction company. No one has a longer pedigree. And TwinSpires.com, featuring TwinSpires TV, TwinSpires Pro, and smartphone wagering with live video.
Look at this, downtown LA live, and the unveiling of the Breeders' Cup 3D painting. All part of the celebration that is the Breeders' Cup in Southern California. 1 week from tomorrow, all gets started at Santa Anita Park. Breeders' Cup 29, the two-day event, November 2nd and 3rd. 15 Breeders' Cup races, 180 horses have RSVP'd. Welcome, everyone, to Santa Anita. I'm Lafitte Pinkai, joined by Hall of Fame jockey Gary Stevens, Jeff Siegel. Gary, pre-entries having arrived. The biggest surprise as far as how they unfolded for these 15 races?
Well, I think the biggest story would have to be Royal Delta being cross-entered in the Ladies Classic and the Classic, just because of the controversy that it will cause if they decide to go in the Classic. Mike Smith already has a commitment with Mucho Macho Man, so somebody's going to need a rider. I don't think that's going to happen, but that was my biggest surprise at the moment.
I'll name Stevens aboard. How about that?
That'd be just fine. Either one of them, I'll take.
Okay.
Jeff, the Europeans, and there are plenty of them. How strong is this year's European contingent?
Actually, I think it's strong. It's concentrated, though, on just 4 or 5 races, but I think they have a chance, the Euros, to win 4 or 5. I mean, they've got 2 terrific fillies in the Breeders' Cup. Filly and mare turf. We're talking about the Fugue and Rosina. They are outstanding. Obviously, St. Nicholas Abbey, the defending champion, coming over. And, of course, we've got a number of good 2-year-olds. Sky Lantern is a terrific 2-year-old juvenile filly in Richard Hannon's barn. And I think Dundonella could have absolutely win the Breeders' Cup juvenile turf. So I really think the ones that they've sent have really good opportunities to do some damage.
You know how good the Europeans have done in Breeders' Cup races here at Santa Anita? The last time the Breeders' Cup was here, 28 Breeders' Cup races, Europeans won 11 of them. Expect them to be a factor. All right, Scott Hazelton standing by with his Pursuit of the Cup news update. And Scott, we start with Graham Motion and Animal Kingdom. You call it an ambitious move or a confident one way or the other. His Derby winner, Animal Kingdom, trying to shake off 10 months' worth of rust in the Breeders' Cup Mile.
Yeah, last seen in February in the Breeders' Cup Mile, a race that could have been carried by Wise Dan and Acceleration, speaking of another high-profile European shipping over. But throw in the Derby winner, and like you said, Lafitte, really jumping into the deep end of the pool, having not been seen in so long. Here's his trainer, Graham Motion.
I've never had a horse probably this good. You know, I think he's an exceptional horse, and that's why we're doing something that's a little out of the ordinary, I guess. I think mostly physically, he's probably filled out even more. I mean, he's a massive horse, this horse. On the scale, he's one of the heaviest horses I've ever had. And I think that's part of the reason why it's been a little bit hard to keep him sound. You know, he's a very fast horse, and he's a very big horse. Logically speaking, I think that's why we've had trouble keeping him sound. But I think mentally and physically, he's really developed. I tell you, he's trained really well this time coming back. I think he's trained better this fall than perhaps he did in the spring, to be honest.
And we've known all along that their target next year is the Dubai World Cup at Meydan, running over the Tapeta track. And Charlie Lepresti saying that that could be the case with Wise Dan. So this might be the first of another matchup that we'll see later on in 2013 with $10 million in the line, Wise Dan v. Animal Kingdom. Well, Bill Mott, he knows how to get horses ready for this big stage. And here he is comparing last year to now this year in 2012.
We ran Heron Classic last year, and I wish I had the crystal ball and I knew beforehand how it's all going to turn out. I just know that last year all our horses were doing very well going into their races. We'd trained at Churchill all month, and everybody was working well. And I thought that they'd run well, you never know that they're going to win or what they're going to do. But, you know, and I think I can say the same this year. Up until this point, I think everybody's done pretty well. So I feel pretty good about all our entries, really.
I might not be feeling too good about the weather that is expected to hit the East Coast in the not-too-distant future. Weather could be an issue for these East Coast shippers, and due in part to Hurricane Sandy. And the Associated Press is calling this storm a Frankenstorm, a combination of high winds, extreme tides, heavy rain, and maybe even a little snow. And it's supposed to hit the East Coast early next week. Some of the big operations that could be affected: Chad Brown, Bill Mott, and Todd Pletcher in shipping their horses out west. Now, the Breeders' Cup has issued a statement on this situation. Horses are required to be on the ground 72 hours in advance of their Breeders' Cup race. However, Breeders' Cup is aware of the potential weather problems in the east, and if the charter plane is delayed taking off and arrives in California past the noon deadline, then we will have our investigators meet the plane when it lands and escort the vans to the track. No penalties will be incurred. So we will see if this Frankenstorm does take shape early next week. Here is the schedule for Breeders' Cup weekend. Starting on Friday, we get the Juvenile Sprint underway for $500,000. Then on to the Breeders' Cup Marathon. Grade 1 Juvenile Fillies get their opportunity on turf. Race number 7 is the Juvenile Fillies on the dirt. Then the Filly and Mare Turf, and it all wraps up on Friday with the Grade 1 Ladies Classic. Going on to Saturday, there are 9 Grade 1 races on Saturday, starting with the Juvies on turf, the Sprint for the Fillies and Mares going on, the Grade 1 Turf down the Hillside Turf Course, the $3 million Grade 1 Turf, and then moving on to the final 3 big races of the afternoon: the Express Bet Breeders' Cup Sprint, the Grade 1 Mile, and the big one, the Grade 1 $5 million Grade 1 Breeders' Cup Classic. And starting on Saturday, we go daily for Pursuit. We go early, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. We will have it all for you right here on HRTV. Lafitte will be just bedding down a stall at one of the local barns and just, I think, just keeping it here overnight to get ready for all these Breeders' Cup shows we got all week next week.
All right, Scott, and that's really the key. When we go daily, it's live, 8 Pacific, and that's when you see these horses with their final – you're not going to want to miss Saturday's show. Those are the final real workouts. Then, of course, how the horses are galloping and how they're getting used to their new surroundings.
How they're behaving themselves, how they handle the adjustment from leaving this big storm to the warmth that we have here in Southern California right now.
All right, we're going to start the divisional rundown with the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Sprint. First race of this year's Cup, 10 pre-entered, 4 cross-entered. Kauai Katie first preference with the Juvenile Fillies. That was a big surprise. So we start with the other filly pre-entered, Gary, Dick Mandela's Beholder.
Well, I can say this, that if she runs as fast as she did in her allowance win here at Santa Anita, she's probably fast enough to win the Breeders' Cup Sprint, let alone beating a bunch of 2-year-olds. But it's no lock, never a lock in racing. Super 99, a 2-year-old colt of Bob Baffert's just broke his maiden. He's fast as well, but this filly, she's going to be tough to deny.
The only question I have is, did she run too fast and too hard for a 2-year-old filly? She earned a 108 bar number, which can be good or bad. It's good because it's incredibly fast, but let's hope that she doesn't bounce off that.
Dick Mandela can't win a Breeders' Cup race at Santa Anita to save his life.
No,
we all know that.
That's the main issue, right? No, not really.
The marathon, wow, 15 pre-entered. Elle Doffer won this race 2 years ago. Fame and Glory, yeah, that Fame and Glory, a former Irish Derby champion. And then you have Bob Baffert's Jay Cito. Gary still trying to win his first race ever at Santa Anita.
Well, and here's the thing, is the marathon oversubscribed with 15 horses. It's no easy spot to try and come out of this slump. He's been a little bit unreliable, I might say.
Well, I was always under the impression that he didn't care for this track, and I didn't think he showed any improvement over it when he was beaten with what I thought was a perfect trip in an overnight race here just last week. So I guess when they go a 1 3/4, anything happens, though. Anything goes.
Let's just hope he corners in this Breeders' Cup event.
He's got a lot of corners to go around.
3 of them. Right. He blew the turn in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. The year before last, a runaway for Uncle Mo. And don't forget, Europeans have dominated the first 2 runnings of the Breeders' Cup Marathon here at Santa Anita. Of course, that was on a synthetic track. We're back to natural dirt. All right, break time here on this 60-minute edition of Pursuit of the Cup. And when we return, 2-year-old fillies, all eyes on Executive Privilege and Dreaming of Julia. Small field. And then, of course, the juvenile fillies turf, a mile for $1 million. Also, Millie Ball's international report.
Well, which champion sprinter is planning his encore appearance at the Breeders' Cup after a failed spell in the breeding shed? You'll have to find out after the break.